Okay, yes then the people, so a bit of an informative slash educational video today regarding this new police bill. Mr. Johnson and his cronies are inevitably going to push through Parliament, right? So the name of this bill is called the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, parts 3 and 4, and it also looks at section 14 of the Public Order Act 1986. So essentially it's a reformative bill that's being passed to modify parts of the Public Order Act, which concerns policing powers in regards to people's rights to protest, right? So, I mean, whatever your political persuasion or like political gripe may or may not be, I'm sure we can all agree that a person's right to protest in a peaceful manner, like it shouldn't be interfered with, you know what I mean? It should never be interfered with. So I'm going to try and break this one down as smoothly as I can. It might not be perfect, but I just want to try and get the message across to the viewers so they can fully understand the kind of connotations of what this bill. So I've got the report in front of me. This was actually released on the 12th of March. So this is just a brief summary. I'm going to go through it quickly. So part 3, clauses 54 to 60 of the bill would make major changes to the way protests are policed in England and Wales. So clauses 54 to 56 and 60 would amend police powers in the Public Order Act, as I said. So police can impose conditions on protests that are noisy enough to cause intimidation or harassment or serious unease, alarm or distress by bystanders, right? So 57 to 58 would amend provisions in the Police Reform and Social Responsibility Act to expand the controlled area around Parliament where certain protest activities are prohibited. It would also add obstructing access to the parliamentary estate. So I think that's to do with kind of defacing monuments and whatnot. So clause 59, this is the one that I really want to, I'm going to go into in a bit more detail, right? So this would abolish the common law offence of public nuisance and replace it with a new statutory offence of intentionally or recklessly causing a public nuisance. So this in itself, this clause 59 in itself it's a very big deal. It's quite a kind of ambiguous thing, like who decides whether someone is intentionally or recklessly causing a public nuisance, right? So this is the one that I want to go into with a little bit more detail. Parts 3 and 4 are amongst the most controversial provisions of the bill. No shit, Sherlock. Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary Fire and Rescue is given their qualified support for them. All right, so I'm going to pick this back up and go through another bit. Okay, so the next part of this document is pretty interesting. It's paying a bit of attention to human rights. So it's basically explaining how, the right to freedom of expression and assembly are fundamental aspects of a liberal democratic society. So they're kind of acknowledging this. They're acknowledging that a right to protest is, a part of a person's human rights. It goes on to say a little bit about the Human Rights Act 1998 and the domestic effect to the European Court of Human Rights. It means that an individual can bring claims on the breaches of these rights. So again, it's kind of building up to something, right? So it's basically saying, we're aware of these human rights, we acknowledge them, people can bring claims, and then it says, however, the police powers to restrict protests must therefore be exercised in a way that is proportionate to one of these aims in order to be compatible with the European Court of Human Rights. This includes a positive duty to protect those exercising their right to peacefully protest. So it's saying that, we know you've got these human rights, we acknowledge them, but regardless, we're still going to bring in this act, which is, to a degree, going to restrict those same rights. So, interesting bit of legislation or legislative manipulation, I would call it. But anyway, moving on. Okay, so the next part of this briefing is just basically highlighting section 14 of the Public Order Act 1986 and what basis must be present for it to be used. So for example, if they believe a protest is to result in a serious public disorder, serious damage to property, or serious disruption to the life or community, they have powers to issue this Section 14 order. However, during this time, the Metropolitan Police Service were found to be misusing it and instead using it to police individual XR gatherings and whatnot. So it goes on to say the Metropolitan Police use of Section 14 during the autumn uprising was found unlawful in the High Court. So essentially this bill is seeing some sort of reform to this act. So it's funny how it was found unlawful, yet despite that, they're actually being granted even more powers to use this act. So yeah, interesting. Okay, so perhaps the most controversial and the most concerning clause in this bill is clause 59, which is essentially abolishing the common law offence of public nuisance and replacing it with a new statutory offence of intentionally or recklessly causing public nuisance. So a person would commit the new offence if the person doesn't act or omits to an act that they are required to do by any enactment or rule of law. A person's act or omission causes serious harm to the public or a section of the public, or obstructs the public or section of the public in exercise or enjoyment of a may be exercised or enjoyed by the public at large, and the person intends that their act or omission will have a consequence mentioned in paragraph B, or is reckless to whether it will have such a consequence, right? So there would be a defence of reasonable excuse for the act or omission concerned. The explanatory notes provide further details. The burden of proof is placed on the defendant as the facts as to whether they have a reasonable excuse will be within their knowledge. The prosecution will still need to have proved all the elements of the offence to the criminal standard of proof, including the serious harm or obstruction that arises as a result of the act. So they're basically saying that they're going to need... So what it looks like to me is this is going to be a bit of legislation that will be used to arrest people, stop them protesting, charge them. But then when it does inevitably go to court, it will be very difficult to be proven, and hence it will be thrown out. So essentially it's like a control mechanism. So they're going to be able to use the legislation to kind of stop people in the act of this supposed crime. But when it actually gets to the courts, look at it, there will need to be, like, it's going to be very difficult to actually prove. And it says the offence will be triable either way and will be subject to the maximum penalties. So look at this: 6 months imprisonment and or an unlimited fine on a summary conviction, and 10 years imprisonment. The government anticipates that the new statutory offence will cover the same conduct as the existing common law offence. The new statutory offence of public nuisance will cover the same conduct as the existing common law offence of public nuisance. The offence captures conduct which endangers the life, health, property or comfort of the public, or to obstruct the public in the act. All right, I'm not going to go into this too much more. I'm just going to wrap this up quickly with what I think this is. Well, I've kind of already explained it, but, what I think this is in response to. So in conclusion, I think that this is the government's preemptive response to those protesters that would have inevitably taken to the streets once COVID-19 vaccines have become the mandate. I think this is a control mechanism for when those events do occur or will occur. This is how they want to go about preventing civil unrest and stopping people's right to protest. I don't know, I don't want to make this too political. This isn't like a fact. This is just my opinion. This is what I think is the reason for why they want to pass this bill. Does all seem a little bit eerie. Does all seem a little bit authoritarian, a bit dark. But yes, interesting times ahead for sure. But yeah, I've tried to explain this as well as I could. Sorry if it wasn't perfect. There might have been a few inconsistencies or mistakes. If you spot any, just let me know in the comments. We can talk about it. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like. I'm back to auditing soon. Going to be active. So yeah, peace and love.